There was a time when the Persian Empire didn't merely dominate the world, it absorbed it completely. 60 nations were embraced, reshaped from within, and reborn in Persia's enduring image. But history has a way of flipping the script. Iran was conquered and swallowed whole on multiple occasions, only to rise again with each new chapter. This rebirth has never sprung from lavish palaces or legislative halls. Instead, it begins in the pre-dawn hush, as a woman's hands skillfully shape warm bread for her family. It lives in the saffron farmer working through the night, carefully gathering delicate crimson threads while racing against a sunrise that threatens to undo months of labor. It persists in simple homes where families of 5 gather around one modest brazier, sustained by an instinctive strength refined across centuries, an inner fortitude that has outlasted every empire seeking to extinguish it. The international community views Iran through the narrow prism of the news cycle: sanctions, missiles, and geopolitical tensions. It sees a government. What remains unseen are the 30 million households quietly waging their daily struggles against soaring inflation, painful isolation, and the gradual erosion of futures once filled with promise. This is not the Iran debated in headlines and policy rooms. This is the resilient Iran that was buried time after time, yet never stopped rising from the ashes. When the world severs your connection to global systems, what do you rely on? For Iran, the answer remains steadfast: the unyielding geography no sanction can displace, and the patient, tireless human labor that no embargo can ever duplicate. Every single barrel of oil exported from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, or the United Arab Emirates must squeeze through the same narrow stretch of water: the Strait of Hormuz. Just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, this vital corridor is so tight that from the Iranian shoreline, you can clearly see the opposite coast on a clear day. This is not just another waterway. It is the fragile geographic hinge upon which the planet's entire energy economy pivots. More than 1/5 of the world's oil, roughly 25%, passes through this single choke point every day, carried in massive supertankers headed for the refineries of China, India, Japan, and South Korea. Iran does not own that oil, yet Iran controls the northern edge of the strait. Even while cut off from the global financial system, the country holds its hand firmly on the throat through which the modern world breathes. Whenever Tehran issues even a subtle warning about Hormuz, global oil markets react within hours. Not because any ship has been disturbed, but because the world instantly remembers who stands guard at the door. But the deepest portrait of Iranian resilience is not found at sea. It is visible at 4 o'clock in the morning in the saffron fields of Khorasan. There, farmers move silently through rows of delicate purple crocus flowers by the light of lanterns. They work quickly in the freezing darkness, hand-picking each fragile bloom before the sun rises and destroys its value. It takes 150,000 flowers to produce a single kilogram of saffron. This same spirit appears in the workshops of master carpet weavers. A skilled artisan may tie 6,000 intricate asymmetric knots in a single day, laboring for 6 long months to complete one carpet. The finished piece is far more than art. It is a portable, inflation-proof store of value that no foreign government can freeze, seize, or devalue with a stroke of a pen. A Persian carpet retains its worth across generations and can be traded directly, bypassing any currency or banking system. Geography, patience, craftsmanship. These are Iran's 3 quiet but powerful economic instruments, each operating in a realm that sanctions were never designed to touch. And when even these prove insufficient against the weight of prolonged isolation, Iranians have long turned to the poetry of Hafez. Not because his verses provide easy answers, but because they offer something more enduring. Language precise and beautiful enough to name their reality. In the Persian tradition, simply naming what is happening has always been the essential first act of survival. To truly understand a civilization, one should begin not with its grand monuments, but with its kitchens and its fields. In Iran's villages, the kitchen is not merely a room, but a laboratory, a classroom, and a temple all at once. It is presided over by women whose hands carry a form of intelligence that no culinary school has ever managed to fully codify. The tandoor oven, that ancient clay cylinder sunk into the earth like a throat waiting to swallow fire, is a social institution and a daily ritual of collective warmth that has survived every empire, every invasion, and every sanction history has thrown at this land. Lighting it requires judgment honed over decades. The dryness of the wood, the pace of the fire, and the internal temperature are read not with any instrument, but with an outstretched palm. The dough is always worked by hand because the elders will tell you with absolute conviction that the warmth of human hands changes the texture in ways no mechanical process can replicate. And beyond the kitchen walls, in the vast saffron fields of Khorasan, the ancient treasury of the East, this same philosophy of patient, concentrated labor reaches its most extraordinary expression. It takes 150,000 purple crocus flowers harvested by hand before dawn in the cold dark to yield a single kilogram of dried stigmas. In a sanctions-constrained economy, this is survival distilled into its purest form. Maximum value, minimum weight, extracted by nothing but human patience and human hands. Every genuine journey into the heart of Iran begins not at a bustling international airport or in front of any grand monument featured on tourist maps. It begins instead in the humble courtyard of a nameless village during those sacred 10 minutes just before sunrise, when the entire world remains wrapped in darkness and the new day has not yet decided what it will become. This is where the authentic spirit of Iran truly lives. Long before the first rays of light have cleared the distant mountain ridges, the village is already awake and in gentle motion. Not with any sense of urgency, but with the quiet, unhurried certainty of people who have performed this same daily choreography for 1,000 mornings and fully intend to continue it for 1,000 more. The grandmother moves gracefully across the courtyard with her broom, her sweeping rhythm carrying the steady authority of someone who has never once needed to be told her responsibilities. Her lips move softly as she recites, half-consciously, verses from a beloved poem she has known since she was only 8 years old. Around her, the morning unfolds like a living, harmonious mechanism. The younger daughters carry feed to the chickens and pigeons. The elder son carefully clears the drainage channels, ensuring that moisture will not undermine the foundations of everything the family has worked so hard to build. This is the survival philosophy of rural Iran in its purest form. It is not reactive or dramatic, but daily, consistent, and deeply relational. The family does not wait for catastrophe to strike and then respond. They nurture their infrastructure and their relationships every single morning with the same quiet consistency and care. By mid-morning, the fragrant wood smoke from the tandoor oven drifts gently across the courtyard like a warm announcement. The first gathering of the day is about to begin. Yazd, known as the Bride of the Desert, emerges with its elegant wind towers and profound quiet from the middle of Iran's vast central plateau. It ranks among the oldest places on the planet where people have lived without interruption. Inside the Atash Bayram fire temple, A flame continues to burn that has remained alive for more than 1,500 years. It endured the Arab conquest, the Mongol invasions, and even the Islamic Revolution. Nobody knows every detail, but we do know it has been carefully maintained across countless generations by Zoroastrian priests dedicated solely to protecting that sacred fire from ever going out. Long before the Muslim call to prayer echoed across Persian deserts, Zoroastrianism provided this culture with its ethical foundation. And what a strong foundation it remains. The faith's core idea stands out with remarkable clarity. The cosmos exists in an unending struggle between Asha, representing truth and universal order, and Druj, the force of lies and disorder. Every person must decide in each moment of daily life which side they will support. This goes far beyond theoretical belief. That Zoroastrian legacy flows quietly underneath all things Iranian, beneath their legendary hospitality, beneath their incredibly precise craftsmanship, and beneath their deep determination not to let their spirit be broken, even when economic hardship pushes hard toward compromise. The holy fire in Yazd serves as more than just a religious symbol. It stands as the most ancient living emblem of a people's commitment to preserving their inner light, no matter how fiercely the outside world tries to put it out. Qom serves as the living spiritual core of the Shia faith, a place where holiness permeates everything so thoroughly that the air itself feels thicker and more meaningful, carrying the layered prayers built up over 14 long centuries. The shining dome of the shrine, dedicated to Fatima Masuleh, towers above the surrounding buildings like a stationary second sun, its golden exterior reflecting the morning sunlight in a way that looks intentionally bright enough to be spotted from the distant places where sorrow draws people toward it. Visitors come pouring in from all parts of the Shia community, including southern Iraq, the southern parts of Beirut, and the Hazara regions of Afghanistan, guided by a belief that goes far beyond asking for faith alone. It requires that belief to be embodied physically, sensed in the deepest parts of oneself, and given generously to anyone nearby without hesitation. Year after year, the Ashura celebration turns the roads of Iran into streams filled with collective grief. This ceremony brings back to life the tragic death of Imam Hussein at Karbala in the year 680 CE. It is an occurrence so essential to what it means to be Shia that it keeps forming the emotional structure of a whole society even 13 centuries after it happened. People from other cultures frequently misunderstand the real meaning of this impressive event. Shia teachings explain that pain is not just something to tolerate passively. Rather, it gets absorbed and changed through group rituals into a foundation of resilience that connects everyone into one strong, unbreakable whole. Qom goes beyond simply providing spiritual rescue. It actually restores and strengthens those spirits every year right there in the streets with an incredible level of passionate and breathtaking commitment. Nestled on the flanks of Mount Sahand in East Azerbaijan stands Kandovan, where a long dormant volcano's dramatic geological history accidentally created one of the most remarkable living architectural wonders anywhere. This village of cones is unique because its residents never constructed houses in the usual way. Instead, the mountain itself became their home. Across millions of years, volcanic ash from ancient eruptions compacted into tufa stone, a material with remarkable opposing traits. It is soft enough to carve easily with simple tools, yet strong enough to protect human life continuously for over 1,000 years. Every dwelling in Kandovan was carefully hollowed straight into these tall cone-shaped rocks, turning each home into a beautifully sculpted space taken from the mountain's very core. The brilliance of this design lies in its natural temperature control. Tufa contains countless tiny air pockets that act as perfect natural insulation, something modern materials still find difficult to match. During winter, warmth from one wood stove spreads into the surrounding rock and stays there long after the fire has gone out. In summer, walls almost 2 meters thick successfully keep the scorching 40-degree heat from entering the living spaces. Livestock areas below add another layer of gentle, radiant heat that naturally rises through the stone floors. Nothing goes to waste here. Every bit of energy serves a clear purpose. This is far from primitive building. It represents an approach to architecture that even today's advanced engineering has yet to improve upon. Perched on the rain-soaked slopes of the Alborz Mountains sits Masuleh, the village that functions as one continuous staircase because its steep terrain made ordinary roads impossible to build. Homes stack upward across a dramatic 100-meter drop, with each lower rooftop serving as the walkway for the houses above. 300 dwellings connect through shared paths that blend private space with public use in a way that only works in societies where personal and communal boundaries overlap naturally. The engineering behind it is impressive, with sturdy wooden supports hidden under every roof, strong enough to handle heavy snow, pouring rain, and the constant foot traffic of families moving between levels. Warm, ochre-colored mud plaster covers the walls, not just for beauty, though the golden hue is stunning, but because it cuts through the thick Caspian fog that rolls in regularly from the north. That distinctive color helps residents navigate home when visibility drops to just a few feet. Masuleh shows what unfolds when a community fully embraces the mountain's demands and ends up crafting something lovelier than any deliberately designed city could ever achieve. Stepping into Abyaneh feels like traveling backward through time, not as a figure of speech, but as a tangible shift, as if the journey itself has carried you into another era. Known as the Red Village of Persia, this settlement ranks among Iran's oldest continuously occupied communities, and its striking color comes naturally rather than from paint. Every surface glows with deep terracotta because builders used local mud blended with iron-rich clay from the nearby mountains. Dried under high-altitude sun, the mixture hardens into a durable, weatherproof material that turns the whole place into a self-maintaining fortress of packed earth. Delicate wooden lattice screens called orosi adorn the windows, adding clever environmental design by letting soft light inside while blocking harsh winds and curious eyes, so rooms stay bright, private, and sheltered. Yet Abyaneh's greatest feat of endurance remains hidden. Its remote mountain setting has safeguarded an ancient form of Middle Persian among the older residents, a dialect so old that experts consider it nearer to the Pahlavi language of the Sassanid era than to today's Farsi. Those red walls do more than house families. They have safeguarded the living sound of a tongue the wider world long assumed had disappeared. Far below Iran's sweeping deserts, hidden beneath sand and silence and apparent emptiness, lies one of the most ingenious pre-industrial engineering feats ever created. Iranians call these gently sloping underground tunnels qanats, channels that stretch up to 50 kilometers or longer. They draw water from deep mountain aquifers and deliver it by pure gravity, without pumps or machines, to distant villages and farmland in the valleys. Yazd, the ancient desert bride, owes its existence to these qanats, as do many other plateau cities that seem like miracles in landscapes where life should not thrive. The system's cleverness comes from keeping water cool underground, preventing the massive evaporation that surface heat above 50 degrees Celsius would otherwise cause. Responsibility for managing the flow belongs to the mihrab, the water master, who times distribution with an ancient brass water clock, a floating bowl with a tiny hole that measures seconds precisely. That exactness formed the bedrock of community harmony, because in places where survival hinged on minutes of water, fairness had to be absolute. For 12,000 years, Iranians met a harsh world by retreating into stone below the surface. Cities later demanded the reverse, rising, spreading, and weaving together 14 million lives in constant motion. The quiet of Meymand, and the energy of Tehran represent opposite expressions of the same drive to endure on one's own terms, shaped entirely by what the land requires. Tucked into the dry highlands of Kerman province lies Meymand, a site archaeologists date back roughly 12,000 years, placing it among the planet's most ancient inhabited spots. From afar, it barely registers on the eye because the villagers carved their homes straight into the compacted sandstone hillsides rather than building upward. In this harsh desert, where temperatures swing 40 degrees Celsius between noon and midnight, they found the smartest answer to extreme heat and cold by going underground. About 250 rooms were shaped by carefully removing stone until each chamber fit daily life perfectly. The science is simple. Once you reach a certain depth, the rock stays steady at the average yearly surface temperature of around 16 degrees Celsius, no matter how hot or freezing the ground above becomes. Locals have enjoyed this built-in climate control for 12 millennia. From a distance, the settlement blends almost perfectly into the hillside, offering protection that proved priceless during centuries when invading forces swept through the region. That natural camouflage delivered more security than any above-ground wall ever could. Tehran, the city of endless contradictions, houses 14 million people who navigate 3 separate realities stacked like layers of rock, each with its own rhythm, rules, and unique sense of liberty. At street level, it presents a dazzling scene of structured disorder, a noisy, smog-filled sea of vehicles, bikes, and walkers that somehow flows according to invisible logic only locals fully understand. The traffic resembles one long, spontaneous performance that keeps advancing against all odds. Drop underground, and a completely different city unfolds. The metro system runs spotlessly, affordably, and with impressive reliability, weaving through the capital's mountainous setting in calm contrast to the lively frenzy above. For many residents, this daily shift between orderly quiet below and inventive chaos above becomes a personal reflection on how opposing systems can coexist and even thrive together. Deeper still exists a third Tehran, invisible on any official map, the virtual world built by the city's youth through VPNs that open doors to a selectively blocked global internet. Far from simple evasion, this represents a collective exercise in intellectual independence. A whole generation raised under sanctions and economic strain has emerged not defeated but remarkably inventive, recognizing the given map was incomplete and calmly sketching their own. Isfahan, the city Persians call half the world, reached its pinnacle during the Safavid dynasty in the 17th century as one of the planet's grandest and most elegant urban centers. European visitors struggled to describe its beauty without sounding as if they were exaggerating. Today, its centerpiece, the vast Naksh-e-Jahan Square, still ranks as one of history's most stunning public spaces, a rectangle so expansive that the minarets at the far side look like they belong to another town altogether. Yet the square, the mosques, and the bazaars, remarkable as they are, do not hold Isfahan's greatest cultural treasure. That honor belongs to the Kaju Bridge, finished in 1650 under Shah Abbas II. Built from the ground up to serve as more than a river crossing, its 17 arches rest on sluice gates that regulate the Zayande River's current. Lower galleries once offered tea houses and gathering spots for everyday public life. But the unplanned magic no designer foresaw, and no authority can schedule, occurs each evening beneath those stone vaults. The arched ceiling naturally magnifies voices, inviting people who gather at twilight to start singing together without any stage, performers, or tickets. Only human voices meeting under stone in a city that has always known the strongest art needs no official support to endure. Shiraz, the city of poets and roses, stands as the intellectual heart of Persian culture, so steeped in literary tradition that locals quote verses across the dinner table the way others trade sports facts. 40 kilometers northeast, the stone terraces of Persepolis rise from a plain that fell silent after Alexander the Great burned the palace complex in a single night of fire in 330 BCE, an intentional cultural erasure that ultimately failed. The surviving carvings on its walls depict an empire on an astonishing scale. 60 subject nations delivering tribute to the Achaemenid court, with costumes and offerings rendered so precisely that scholars can still identify specific garments 3,000 years later. The empire vanished, yet the stone endures. That lesson has shaped Shiraz residents more than anything else in how they relate to poetry. At the tomb of Hafez, the 14th century lyric genius, whose ghazals form the most memorized verses in Persian culture, visitors still open his collected works at random and read the first line as a personal guide, a way of interpreting today's challenges through centuries of accumulated insight. This practice is no mere superstition. It acknowledges that a poet who spent his life pondering change and longing distilled into 14-line poems a kind of practical wisdom that still feels strikingly relevant 600 years on. "4,000 years of invasions, 4,000 years of flames, conquest, and economic pressure. Yet through every trial, the bread continued to bake each dawn. The sacred flame stayed lit. The poems stayed alive in the memories of children who learned them simply because they must. An army can destroy a palace. A sanction can wreck an economy. But nothing in history has ever reached inside a grandmother's skilled hands to take away the knowledge she carries. No law has ever stopped the urge to sing beneath a stone arch simply because the sound felt right. No banking system has ever managed to seize the meaning held in a line of Hafez recited quietly between strangers. This is not the Iran the world usually sees, but it is the Iran that has always existed, quietly confident that every outsider would one day depart, while the bread still needed to rise before sunrise.